Hello, it's Lubjub, and welcome to Chapter 4, Larry and the Scrollitorium Blues, Part 1. A trip to the leaky shaft for freshening up was the next step. It's been there since we were genuinely clean, and if we need to be sneaking around any time soon, it will not work if they can smell us before hearing us. Rhua, sniffing her armpit, quickly pulled her head away. Horace, being the more turned-out chap that he is, nodded in agreement. So I took the lead, walking us to the south gate, where the leaky shaft is located. A sort of all-in-one repair shop, tub house, laundry room, area, and a cooperative. Run by agents voted in at the capitals of each race. The money generated returns right back into the place, keeping it running. It's the only true neutral store on the entire world, so it's everywhere. Even the Cohens have outlets, and they generally fear anything mechanical in origin. As we pass through the entrance, the receptionist waves at us to step closer, but not before the smell of chlorine cleaning solution intoxicates us for a moment. The receptionist, Kurt Doll, according to the name tag, was wearing the leaky shaft attire. Black overalls, with notably white pockets, typical of dual-coloured silk, specifically from the Algota species of arachne.
Sorry about the smell. If you're here every day, it just becomes the norm,
Kurt said, with a deep guttural growl that did not fit his size. "With a big package today, my friend. Can you include a box of deodorizers in that? It's been rough lately, and we could do a keep you fresher for longer," said Wardi. Kurt nods, pointing us in the direction of the tub house changing rooms, and we head on inside. The water when we entered the tub house felt exactly like that one hug you received growing up. Warm, engulfing, and a perfect remedy to a harsh day. As expected, others were in the tub house. It's also a common place frequented like taverns, particularly those that deem themselves a bit more upmarket. Wardi was talking with a robust and strong soldier type towards the small waterfall, continuously refreshing the water. Making hand gestures towards Horace, in which I was asking if he had seen Rhua, he replied, shaking his head. And without warning, a nimble hand, and cold-looking hand, appeared to touch Horace's shoulder. The pale frosty fingers triggered shivers through his body as they clamped down. In a reflexive motion, he leapt up, accidentally headbutting the poor girl trying to get his attention. A ferocious right hook came from a fiery-haired Rhua in response, who sent Horace underwater, contemplating funeral songs. "Hi-yo, dearies," the young woman sobbed, trying to wipe the tears whilst holding her pasting nose. The familiar tone she spoke with quickly filled me with delight. "Lucy, it's good to have you back with us," I said, rushing over with a cloth to dry her eyes with. Glaring at Horace, Rhua angrily, I bumped into her whilst coming out of the changing room. "And we thought it would be fun to prank one of you, so thanks for beating up a small defenceless haberdash phylacterist, Horace." Horace, having been publicly shamed, continued to stay underwater as punishment and raised his hands together in a praying motion above the water to ask for forgiveness of Lucy. She conjured a water pillow to float him to the surface and patted his head. "It's all my fault, dearie. I scared you." I realised this is the first time in 2 or so years I've seen Lucy outside of her hat. Was she always this short, I thought, noticing that she barely has her head above the water. While she is only 20 and normally wears large-heeled boots, her distinctive fizz-gum blue hair was barely visible with the towel covering earlier, which makes sense why I couldn't recognise her before. Wardi, having finished his conversation, heads over to join us. "Hey, Hanky, glad to have you back with us. What's been occurring whilst you were away?" Wardi says in a cheeky tone. "Wardi, just because I'm one doesn't mean you should call me in a dumb way. Say it properly." Lucy pulled a huffy face in response. "I am well. It is good to be back with the party, especially with recent weird events happening here lately." Lucy gave us the rundown. It became apparent that us reuniting with our resident Luth enthusiast was likely going to prove essential in the days ahead. "Larry has gone missing. Strange noises in, and unfamiliar energy in the manor. And the townspeople acting suspicious." "Ugh, This is an award-winning recipe for danger, Rhua said, with a worrying tone. There was a few seconds of silence, when broken by Horace piping up. Where shall we start? I say we try and get information from the townies. Can't be sure if any are being influenced, and I don't think we should take any chances. Wardi pulled out the bright silver keg from his bag. A full keg is about an hour's use. Should be able to gather the intel before it runs dry. We gathered our equipment from the lockers in the area room. I forgot how great we looked after we put our gear back on, and glanced at myself and party members in the long mirror built into the wall. Rhua, now her hair washed away with the built-up layers of grime, stood out with her long thick hair shimmering the colours of burning coal. The shape of it fell like a Tigion's mane, giving her a wild look, heavily contrasting the orderly silver-scale plate mail she wears. As a Chevalier Caller hybrid, she faces the brunt of attacks, and the occasional support. Her shield and shield abilities have been vital to our longevity. Horace, his white hair against grey ash-like skin, was short and neat, pairing well with his red bouffal leather attire. Looked formidable. Putting that helmet back on, though, and he was back about half as dangerous looking. With a crossbow at hand and as an artillerist Syntheneer hybrid class, Horace fights at the back using a multi-purpose turret that attacks primarily through shells that detonate on contact. Through buttons in his spare hand glove, he can set timers and manually detonate his shells as well. This is especially helpful for his debilitating or support shells. And as a Syntheneer, he's able to make his own concoctions whilst being on the move. Wardi's distinctively neat, dirty, dark hair colour, looking ready to entice anything that looks at it. His Eastern combat garb, with its distinctively loose and black cloth, was unusual for a frontline fighter, though he swears by it, and I must agree, he's certainly a remarkable sight during a fight. Wardi uses his Prancer abilities to fight up front with me and Rhua, using high speed and precision. His nature and background are what typically lead us through the day-to-day. Lucy was in her familiar mage's hat, smiles and all. Her face was the only thing visible, and the outline of her extendable wand, using her wand for extremely basic arts that do not require focus or channeling, like quick dispelling or bonking the head of enemies that get slightly too up close. As a haberdash phylacterist, Lucy is our main offensive fighter with supportive duties on occasion. Without her, enemies that are immune to physical attacks are absolutely off limits. Not to mention, she can heal us far better than what we can afford for healing items lately. Now Lucy has returned to us, we have a stable group, one that could manage slightly more dangerous threats if they should arise. Of course, as an undefeated non-sentient, I'm capable of soloing anything in front of me. Zing zing zingaroni, I thought to myself as almost breaking into a laugh. Stepping back into the streets, and being only a couple of hours into the afternoon, it was eerily quiet, unusual for a town on a main trade route. The only people on the streets were merchants with carts and hestifules on their way to other towns. Taverns are always a good place to gather information, and from what I've seen so far, the Prince Albert has my gaze drawn since I arrived. I'm not going in there alone, Lucy said, her voice not coming through so well due to the nature of her newly created garb squeezing her face whenever she speaks. I'm familiar with Hattie the owner. She's a good woman. I'll save the boss until she points me in the right direction. I think this will plain sailing troop, zing zing. I'm placing bets that Larry is in the manor somewhere. 40 HFC. Probably not the best time to place bets, but it gives everyone something to look forward to when I win. Heh. I'll raise you 60. Larry's out of town and related to all this, Rhua says confidently. Horace aims for a high-five jive, signalling he's in on the bet with Rhua, but she turns him down, hurting his fragile being. Lucy pouts and tells us not to be silly in a time like this. It could be a sad ending. Wardi has already entered the tavern and is talking with the bartender as we get in. It's darker than the previous locale we visited, yet cosy. Almost a suitable place for someone to take advantage of stealth and take out targets quickly if it came to it. We grab a booth to sit in, and I decide I'm going to be safe and create a little privacy for us, I thought. I pull out my almost past its use-by date Misfitter's Mutasphere. It's rare, and when I checked the auction house last, it was expensive as hell. Lucky for me, however, I acquired it in a chest that was randomly out in the open near Cock Manor. Rhua went loopy. I threw it up in the air, and a jade mist whooshed around and enveloped the booth. A circular barrier continuously swirling prevents any external tampering. Horace was surprised I had one, but I'm not sure why he was. It's only rare in the sense that if you don't see them very often, most guilds use them. Misfitters isn't exactly known for selling stuff that isn't market vendor purchasable either. There's probably someone in the town selling one just at a ludicrous price. We talked about what happened, until now, with Lucy and vice versa. She left us before we had made our temporary base in Hawkstown, running a separate request which happened to coincide with needing to go near Etnarvon, dealing with the sludgeoneer that had been aggravating ribbos at the Potpourri swamp. Any time that an unfortunate poor soul took a wander past, he got them all fired up and they started beating on them. Being highly vulnerable to arts, this was a walk in the park for her, and it took her no time to see them off deeper into the area and then give him a good head wobbling and put a stop to it. The request giver only gave the Scrollitorium as a reward destination, so imagine her surprise when she arrived only to find it closed. "Before you ask, support counts was no help at all," she quickly finished with. "They're only ever interested in helping if the request is higher than 5 on a grand scale." I piped up with a annoyed tone, shaking my head in disbelief. You know how it is. Guild League tables can make or break an adventuring guild, and they're too focused on keeping up with the Ponty pincers for joint third. "I'm still not sure what a sports club is, but it sounds like a guild. But nothing of actual value to society occurs within, and only cause rivalry without any benefits." It got me thinking, which is rare, as you've probably realised by now. She has a point. And when I think about it, sports only benefit the players back on Terra, players who get paid, regardless of a loss or win. But the fans never got their money back if the team's lost. The more I thought about it, the more I started to suddenly lose track of my thoughts, and suddenly I'm in the room zoning out. "Hi all, it's me, Lucy. I've been away doing other things, so I know you've not had time with me around. Allow this little haberdash phylacteries to give you all important bits without any terrible jokes. The higher up the league table, the greater the selection of requests offered by the guild. The guilds are usually working alongside the most well-known individuals across Malata. The kings, queens, and celebrities, of course, the highest-ranked sentients, which are heads of the top guilds themselves, dealing with the most difficult or dangerous Malata has to offer. Zubor counts, as I mentioned earlier, managed by MC Waters, feisty and not good at makeup, yet a fearsome wind arts and great sword user if the situation asks for it. Her class is Current Seeker, a master of aerial fighting. I once saw her charge into a haunting of banshees, single-handedly over 200 scary femme fatales waiting to shriek at her. Then in the next few seconds, her broadsword had impaled at least 15 in violent motion and straight into the ground, blowing up meters of dirt as it embedded itself. She landed on the hilt of it and channeled an ancient wind art, then blew the rest of them to dust. I couldn't believe my eyes getting to see arts like that in action. I consider myself talented, and it would take 8 of me to produce that sort of power. The guild leaders are all high-caliber people. Whilst not all may be MC in combat, they can make up for it in other ways. Sentients, Galgu Trit, for example. They are high-ranking crafters. Most crafter and gatherer types use tools and machines made at the Unending Toil Guild, managed by Galgu himself. He can turn a toothpick into something strong enough to fight monsters beyond a 5 on the grand scale, which is a true story. That's all from me now. Bye! I zoned out for a while and sensed that somewhere out there in the great sea of stars, an uncountable number of sleeps just occurred at once, reading an essay nobody asked for. I asked if anyone's seen Wardi yet, and Rhua just replied to me, "It's been at least 20 minutes since you went upstairs." That was a very tough recording.